Welcome to the HSC Alliance MasterClass Series. My name is Tieman, co-founder and CEO of HSC Alliance. In today's masterclass, I will be covering the topic of halal purchasing. In particular, I will be covering procurement strategy, purchasing process, and horizontal collaboration. So when we talk about halal purchasing, it's also good to dive deeper into what purchasing is all about. So many of you are familiar with purchasing when you go to a supermarket or shopping mall where you buy products. So this is the purchasing by the consumer. So what we are talking about here when we talk about purchasing for corporations. So what is halal purchasing, or what is purchasing in general? Purchasing involves everything you get the receipt for. So that can be products you buy, that can be raw materials, can also be packaging material, can also be services. So for example, labor you are hiring, you get also a receipt for that. Can also be energy, for example. So that is all related to the manufacturing. Is also called direct purchasing. You can also do renovation to your factory, that is called works. So when we talk about purchasing in a corporate setting, we talk about goods, services, and works. That can be for the actual physical production, but it can also be for the head office. In that case, we talk about indirect. So office supplies, the pencils, that is an example of indirect goods. They are not turning up anymore in the end product. This is for office use. Cleaning services, also a good one for head office, which is a service, indirect. And also renovations to the head office. That's also indirect purchasing of works. So purchasing is important today because it's a big part of the expenses of a company. So why is halal purchasing so important? First of all, if you want to get halal certified, you have to make sure that all your ingredients, but also packaging materials are halal certified and or halal compliant. So the halal certification body will determine which ingredients and what kind of packaging material needs to be halal certified. As most of you know, there are different halal certification bodies in the world, and also different requirements regarding which components need to be certified and which don't need to be halal certified. So there are differences between Malaysia and Indonesia, for example, on agriculture products, where Indonesia it requires to be halal certified and Malaysia not. That can be, for example, fresh tomatoes which are cut. Malaysia requires those products to be halal certified, whereas Indonesia doesn't. So there are differences between halal certification body. It's also critical to build and maintain a solid supplier base of suppliers that supply your raw materials and packaging material. Also make sure they have a proper halal certificate, which is the same halal certificate as your halal authority for your manufacturing or is recognized. There is no faster way to lose your halal certificate by non-compliance of your suppliers. So maybe this is the most important masterclass of HSC Alliance because it's such an important topic of this. Also, purchasing ensures that all supply chain partner contracts by the company are halal compliant. So procurement purchasing is dealing with a lot of contracts, and they are determining the contract clauses. These are not only suppliers of raw materials and ingredients, but also of, for example, logistics services. So procurement is drafting those contracts. I've been working with a lot of companies to obtain halal certification and halal supply chain audits. And I see a lot of failures in purchasing contracts where there are no proper halal clauses part of purchasing contracts, and which is result in non-compliance or higher risks in the halal supply chain. Finally, also purchasing plays an important role in screening the market of suppliers. As many of you are involved in halal manufacturing of food and cosmetics, as well as pharmaceuticals, you know that the whole market of raw materials is quite big. But if you need to look for halal certified products, it's already much smaller. And then those suppliers that have the same halal certificate as yours or is recognized by the same halal certification body, it's even a much smaller pool of suppliers you choose from. And so purchasing also plays an extremely important role also for market intelligence for the supply base. So I've been working as advisor over more than 15 years to help companies to get halal certified and in supply chain audits. So what are some of the lessons learned? First of all, purchasing extremely important as foundation of the halal assurance system. Purchasing also needs to be present in the internal halal committee and halal management team for most halal certification bodies, including Malaysia, Indonesia, and also in the Middle East. So purchasing is important. When companies go for halal certification, the biggest implication are not on the manufacturing, are not on logistics, not on sales, but most of it, all those problems go back to the purchasing department. In particular, the raw materials, in particular suppliers that are not halal certified. I worked for multinational cosmetics companies to get them halal certified. We had to do parallel certification of both the manufacturing of the cosmetics products as well. It's perfume suppliers, and a lot of cosmetics comes with a smell, so that is a perfume. If you want to be halal certified, perfume is an important ingredient of a cosmetic, which also need to be halal certified. So we had to work parallel with the manufacturer as well as the suppliers to get them certified. Only where both were compliant, then the brand owner could put its product as halal certified. So purchasing plays an extremely important role, and most of the work, the efforts are indeed in purchasing. I've been working with a very big multinational cosmetics company, and I can tell you here from experience, the most impact, the critical path on the halal certification timeline is totally, fully determined by if the supplier is able to provide all supporting documents. I thought working for this multinational and so all suppliers would be happy to provide all supporting documents. It was quite disappointing. It took a long time. We even had to escalate this to the head office in the US for this cosmetics company, had to put pressure on suppliers to fast track their support of their documents which were needed to approve a supplier and get also recognition from the halal certification body in the various countries. So supporting documents from suppliers is on the critical path, and often you have to escalate it to very high levels in the organization to put pressure on suppliers. They are not always very keen to share documents, and if you want your supplier to be approved, a lot of documents are needed. And if you're working with suppliers, with some suppliers that are not always familiar with halal or have not been part of a lot of halal certification programs, that might be a quite tedious exercise, I can tell you. Another important area is also that the monitoring of suppliers. One of the most important information to monitor is the expiry date of a halal certificate. As suppliers that are supplying raw materials and packaging materials that come with a halal certificate need to have a valid halal certificate. In case it expires, it's not anymore okay to take products from that supplier. And the brand owner can get into real trouble when a halal certificate is expired of a supplier, which might lead to even switching of suppliers. And if this really gets into trouble, also even the brand owner might lose its halal certificate. So this is critical to monitor. What I often see in companies, that this is not automated, that the expiry dates are not always automatically checked. And for example, what you could do is that 6 months before expiry, that you send an automatic email to that supplier, notifying the supplier that its halal certificate is expired. Please send us the new halal certificate. And then, for example, 4 months in advance, another reminder, please send us your halal certificate. And then, if still no sound, I mean, after 3 months, 3 months before expiry, you might need to look at a switching supplier. It's also important, next to expiry dates, that also the supplier halal certificate needs to be recognized by the halal authority you're using for your manufacturing facilities. So, for example, if I'm halal certified by BPAPH, the halal certification body in Indonesia. There's a list of which halal certification bodies are recognized by BPAPH. The problem is that it's not a static list. That list is updated a few times a year with new halal certification bodies that are recognized, but also halal certification bodies that are dropped off that list. When your halal certification body that your supplier is using, the certification body your supplier is using, is dropped off that list, you have a problem. Because now your halal certificate of your supplier is not anymore recognized. So this list is extremely important to monitor closely, and you need to be proactive, not only proactive regarding changes in that list, but also that you have a supplier base that is solid. So the more certificates your supplier has, the easier it is to deal with that supplier. Or have a supplier that has the same halal certificate as yours. In this way, you also eliminate this risk. So there are various tactics you can use to minimize risks regarding your supplier base. Finally, it's important to also bring the level of proficiency regarding halal purchasing to the next level. We often see not proper key performance indicators used by procurement department, which is an issue. You need to develop your own KPIs and bring halal procurement, halal purchasing to the next level. One of the KPIs I've been working on and created was the halal procurement maturity, which is a 3-stage model. So what does it say? The maturity of halal procurement or halal purchasing organization is starting with stage 1, more or less viewing halal compliance as an opportunity or a problem. You can argue companies want to be halal certified in this stage, so they have to make sure that the supplier of raw materials, the suppliers of packaging material are halal compliant, halal certified with the right halal certificate. So this is the main job. There's a lot of work for companies, food, but also cosmetics that are dealing with far more ingredients as compared to the food industry, or even more complex pharmaceuticals, where a change of supplier might even lead to new clinical tests. So this is not only an issue for food, but it can be even a very big issue for cosmetics and pharmaceutical industries. So important competencies that need to be acquired for organizations is knowledge on halal, knowledge on halal certification, establish a proper internal halal committee, or halal management team is called in Indonesia, and develop a solid halal policy, because the halal policy will be at the end also the basis also for the halal purchasing organization. So what are the purchasing opportunities? So assessing the Halal compliance of supplier base, I developed a tool for that in my research and have been using that for some of my clients I've been working with over the past year. That goes a little bit too much detail for this masterclass. And also using this compliance to induce supply chain partners to get Halal certified beyond the supplies of ingredients and packaging materials. So that's the first stage, seeing Halal compliance as an opportunity or problem to be addressed. The second stage is looking at the entire supply chain, is questioning, I think, also the Halal integrity of your supply chain partners. Some of the suppliers are logistics, you're buying. So that's also an important part of your supply chain part that might be managing your regional distribution center. And so what are some important skills to acquire is skills in auditing suppliers, but also further in the supply chain, and also the ability to redesign whole supply chains with a lower supply chain risk. So where are the opportunities in here is about harmonizing halal standards or halal practices throughout the supply chain. In the HSC Alliance, we are working on the halal supply chain protocol harmonization. So within halal standards that we look at how can we harmonize halal supply chain protocols and practices throughout the supply chain, because your supply chain is as strong as its weakest link and not as its strongest link. Also looking at how can we make improvements in procurement strategy and purchasing process. So that will be an important part of this masterclass today. Finally is the stage 3, which is for a lot of companies, future music, where we talk about talking about the entire halal value chain. And when we talk about the halal value chain, this also incorporates areas such as Islamic banking, takaful, ability also to redesign products to be less animal-based, and also relook at the production and also the supply chain to address areas of sustainability. So some companies are looking already on this area of Islamic finance and takaful. There's also areas where we, as the whole Supply Chain Alliance, also are helping organizations to address these throughout their supply chain. So the basis of the halal purchasing function is the halal policy of the organization, which also will go down as a waterfall into the procurement strategy and purchasing process. So let's dive deeper into, first of all, the procurement strategy. Those people that are involved in the procurement department, they're probably familiar with the Kraljitz portfolio matrix. So this is one of the tools to develop a procurement strategy. So you develop a procurement strategy for the things you buy, all the purchases. That can be your ingredients, can be your packaging materials, maintenance, repair, operating, can be your machinery, can be also insurance, takaful, can also be logistics services, and everything you buy, software. So what procurement does, they group certain categories together. So all ingredients, raw materials they put together, they put all software buying together. So these are procurement groups. And what they do for every group, they want to see within the year how much money is involved. So for raw materials, ingredients, normally a lot of money involved. So then it has a high importance of purchasing, which is the vertical axis. Other products like toilet paper, pencils have a low value. That makes it a low importance of purchasing. Then on the horizontal axis, we have supply risk. And that is based on how many potential suppliers are available. In case I want to switch to suppliers, is there low or high cost involved? So a low supply risk is a typical product, are the stationaries, the pencils. You can buy it everywhere, changing supplier, no problem. It's also low purchasing value, so it's low importance in purchasing and low in supply risk, which made it routine product. What you do with routine products, you want to decentralize, simplify, you have your purchasing cards to simplify purchasing cost, because any additional cost is quite high as compared to the product value. Leverage products are high in value and low in supply risk. And here you have a very good power position where you can put pressure on a supplier and you can get discounts. On the other hand, the high supply risk, if you talk about bottleneck products are low in value but high supply risk, taking a lot of time off the procurement department. So you want to make sure you have continuity of supply and you have strategies in place, and you're looking for multiple suppliers to make sure that you have enough supply. Strategic products where you have a lot of money involved for a purchasing group, but also high supply risk. In this case, you want to have long-term arrangements with those suppliers and trying to have a good performance of that supplier, commitment of that supplier in a kind of win-win situation. So traditionally, companies base their procurement strategy on where is that product category, on what part of the Kraljic portfolio is that category. Based on that, they will have certain strategies and tactics towards suppliers. In my work, I found there's a mismatch. When halal comes into play, there are problems with this matrix. So what I did in my research, and also I've been working as advisor to companies, is to relook at how to draft proper strategies when we talk about, in particular, halal critical items such as raw materials, but also packaging materials. So there are two dimensions. So first of all, there is the halal dimension from halal sensitivity of a product. So if the product is animal-based, it would move a product from low to high. So halal sensitive, if a product category is below routine product or bottleneck product, so low in value, it would move it to high importance, from low importance to high importance. The second dimension is if the supply chain partner is in a non-Muslim country. So I can have a supplier of meat from Australia, a non-Muslim country, or I can have a fruit concentrate from Germany, a non-Muslim country, or I can buy meat from Pakistan, a Muslim country. So if a supply chain partner is based in a non-Muslim country, then it would move the supply risk from low to high. So this has consequences for the procurement strategy. So what we see, the impact of halal is, so for products can move in this matrix from up, from low to up, and from left to right, based on the categories of that product group. So some examples. So we have meat. So maybe if you're manufacturer of sausages, meat is an important ingredient, a lot of money involved. So our meat purchases is high in value, therefore important, but we are importing it all from Australia, a non-Muslim country. So in this case, instead of a leverage product where meat you could buy everywhere for the sausages, it becomes a strategic product with a different reaction to your strategy, where you want to have a strategic long-term view with that supplier and contract. Animal-based additives, a good example is gelatin. That might be low in value. Gelatin is a common product. It's very easily available. A lot of gelatin, however, is porcine-based, which is not halal. In case you want to have halal certified gelatin, it becomes much more difficult to get, and it's really a challenge. So first of all, it might come from non-Muslim majority countries, and secondly, it's also animal-based. So it would move animal-based additive like gelatin from low position routine product to a strategic product. So very different in terms of strategic approach. A fruit concentrate from Germany would move it from a low routine product to a bottleneck product, but also different approaches. So this is an example of how the halal requirements will have consequences also for the way you work with suppliers. So if you want to read more on that topic of this, you can read my academic paper, Principles in Halal Purchasing, which was published already 12 years ago, which also won an academic award, by the way, as well as my book, where it is explained in more detail. So what we see that halal leads to stronger partnerships with suppliers in case it is a strategic or leverage product. In case it is a bottleneck product, it will be important to adopt various strategies to secure continuity of supply with also possible multiple suppliers. So hopefully it gave some understanding of how halal leads to different purchasing procurement strategies for when you're dealing with halal critical items. So I've been working here with also food companies on halal procurement. So how does that impact? So first of all, the halal critical items. On the one hand, you can argue these are, of course, the ingredients and packaging materials, but also in discussion, also with through various workshops, also with the food industry, and also my work as advisor also to food companies. We see that next to food ingredients, packaging materials, also other products you buy can be considered halal critical. So, for example, the equipment and tools used in production. So you have conveyor belts, where the product might be physically touching. So you have already halal certified conveyor belts, even from manufacturers and exporters from the UK, I've seen. Also paint today can be halal certified. Plastics that can also be used as conveyor belts can also be halal certified today, where certain components, in particular in the plastic softeners and in the paint, can be of non-halal origin. Laboratory supplies for testing. So various companies also looking the halal compliance of that. Although that in testing in labs, the sample is destroyed. It can also be part of best practices to remove as much as possible non-halal products out of your facility, including also your lab. Primary packaging is also an important component, which I shared before. Certain halal certification bodies also make it mandatory that the primary packaging materials, the packaging material that is touching the product, can be the plastic bottle, it can be the top of the bottle. Also, halal compliance is important in there, including also the label of products. You can argue that the label does not touch the physical product, but the label can also be important if there is non-compliance in there. If porcine is found in the painting of the label, that can be an issue of risk, or it can be used by your competitor that is checking everything from your product in order to find non-compliances and make this an issue in social media. Water filters are extremely important for a lot of food, but also cosmetics ingredients. Water is an important ingredient. So water used in products come often from the local water supply. In your factory, you also have water filters to further purify the water. Some of those water filters are carbon-based. Carbon has the origin of bones. That can be an issue if they are from pig bones, for example. So you have already available water filters, carbon-based, which are halal certified. If you don't have carbon filters, you can also have metal filters or other plastic filters. So a lot of manufacturing, you have different filters, and the metal filters, of course, there's then no issue. But if they're carbon-based, there is a halal issue. And check that those filters is an important area of non-compliance and even risk for your product, as water is for a lot of companies an important ingredient. So don't forget about that one. Then cleaning chemicals and hand sanitizers, many of those today also can be found halal certified. Then finally, logistic service providers also found to be critical. In some countries like Indonesia, halal certification is not only mandatory for production, food already since October last year, for cosmetics by next year, and pharmaceuticals starting by next year as well, October 2024 in Indonesia, where not only the product need to be certified, but also the supply chain, so including also logistics. I've been working with a cosmetics multinational company where we also established the national distribution center. The building was owned by the cosmetics company, but the operator was not the cosmetics company, but was a logistics service provider. So when we were looking at the supply chain, the national distribution center had to become halal certified. So that was important in our halal supply chain design. So in order to make that possible, the operator needs to be halal certified. And so we wrote a letter on behalf of the cosmetics company to the logistics company that was operating the national distribution center in Indonesia. And we gave the logistics service provider two options: to be halal certified by a certain date or remove the premises. So it is that important for brand owners to look at this. And the national distribution center, you see that in Indonesia, but also in Malaysia, where a lot of brand owners have that halal certified. This is important to make sure that there are some base practices in there. Although most logistics and halal supply chain standards are not prescriptive, still important that brand owners specify exactly what a halal distribution center is and what are the base practices, because halal control points are not in existing halal supply chain standards. So what we see for companies, that they use, if we talk about procurement strategies, is that they have often backup plans for halal critical items, purchase, including ingredients and packaging materials, as well as water filters. So to make sure that in case the supplier cannot perform, that they can switch to different suppliers. So you see, instead of single sourcing, you often see multiple sourcing of suppliers. There's also preference for local suppliers of halal critical items, and the reason is very simple, because the local supplier has the same halal certificate as yours. So there's no risk of that the halal certificate is not anymore recognized by your halal certification. So in this way, it eliminates that risk of halal certificate not recognized. There's also preference of halal critical items of those suppliers that all need to be halal certified. Although often the halal certification board is only mandating that for ingredients and packaging materials, not always for those other products and services. Leading brand owners I've been talking to, they prefer also those other areas to be halal certified. What's also important, finally, that there are business contingency plans for suppliers, also to have that drafted. So what in case of non-compliance, and early notification to suppliers to make sure that the purchasing department has some time to make corrections to their supply base. So halal does not make the life easier for the purchasing department, but there's no quicker way to lose your halal certificate by non-compliance of your supply base. So this really needs serious attention, needs serious best practices. I think also training of your procurement department on this so that they have the right tools, the right KPIs, and also have IT to support this, to have automatic notifications to internally but also externally to suppliers to protect your risk of your supply base. So a final note on the procurement strategy. So we see that conventional commodity strategies for halal certified companies or companies that want to become halal certified are not really effective. So that leads to suboptimal allocation of procurement strategy. So relook at your procurement strategy for halal critical items to make sure it is a better match and that you have the proper strategies in place to leverage your position as a brand owner, but also ensure a continuity of supply. The next topic I would like to discuss with you is on purchasing process. So the purchasing process consists of tactical purchasing and operational purchasing. So this is a model I have adopted from Van Wele. He is an important academic and also teacher in the area of purchasing, written many books on procurement strategy and the purchasing process. So this model of Van Wele is the standard of the purchasing process. So I've been looking at what is the implication of halal to this purchasing process of particular halal critical items. So the first process step of halal purchasing process is determine specification. This is the most important purchasing step. So in here we're looking at for which halal critical items, including services, for which one do we need a halal certificate? So that needs to be established. And which halal certificate needs to be recognized by the halal certificate or multiple halal certificates you're using as a manufacturer. So what halal certificate do we require for the products we are purchasing? Secondly, we also need to know if it's animal-based. What is the method of slaughtering required? This is very important if we talk about meat we are buying, but also gelatin requirements can also be an issue that looks into this. So there are two options: machine slaughtered or hand slaughtered, stunning or no stunning, and depends on the country which method of slaughtered are allowed. And these are very important and critical to serve to make sure that the ingredients you are buying are compliant. Also, we look at the logistics. Indonesia is making mandatory that logistics is also halal certified for food, cosmetics, and pharmaceuticals. I expect that by the year 2030, this will also apply to other OIC countries, advanced OIC countries such as Malaysia and some in the Middle East, that by 2030 this is also mandatory by law. There is an international halal supply chain management standard, which is the OIC SMIC 17, which is addressing transportation, storage, also retail, and soon also ports, which is based on the Malaysian halal supply chain management standard. Yes, it is a standard, but unfortunately there are no specific requirements regarding what to put on the freight documents, how exactly to store, how exactly to transport. So under the HSC Alliance, we have been working on, together with the industry, work on harmonizing halal supply chain protocols to make it easier for if we talk about international supply chains. Unfortunately, a big part of our suppliers you're using might not be halal certified, maybe 5%. Some of the companies in the supply chain might have some internal halal system, which might be based on the halal assurance system on some base protocols. A big part of the supply chain have no blueprint, but they might have some basic halal and food safety or product quality guidance. So when you're building your supply chain, you have to understand that not everybody is halal certified, and you have to deal with that with your logistics service providers, with your suppliers, which might be importers that you're dealing with that import from products from overseas. The product might be certified, but your importer is not. Your freight forwarder might not be halal certified, your transporter not. So in practice, you're dealing with a lot of suppliers that are not halal certified. I've always the principle that halal by design, and that halal needs to be by contract clauses to be confirmed. So regardless if they're halal certified or not, we need to develop proper halal clauses, and it is an important aspect. So in selecting the supplier, which is the second step in the halal purchasing process, it's not only about the product, the halal certificate, it's also about the halal policy of the supplier. Is there a halal policy? Is there also a proper quality policy in place? Is halal logistics being addressed? Also about Islamic finance and takaful, is that put in place? I was speaking at the Kuala Lumpur Islamic Finance Forum yesterday, where they talked about Islamic finance and takaful. It's coming. I mean, that also those requirements need to be addressed throughout the supply chain. Finally, pricing is important, so that there's no ambiguity in the pricing. It is transparent. No interest is also part of that. So also Islamic banking and financial principles also do apply to the pricing. So selection of suppliers traditionally based on the base requirements and the cheapest. I'm of the opinion that we need to have multiple scoring of selecting the right suppliers. And I've been working with brand owners to make sure that they have a more weighted scoring in order to select the right supplier and ensure that the supply base is more solid. Contracting is the third process step in purchasing process. It's important that in the contract clauses there's no interest in place, that there's no ambiguity of the terms and also the pricing, and there's no element of gambling in there regarding to the price setting, for example. Important in contracts is the halal clause. Also specify exactly what are the requirements regarding the halal certificate, its recognition, and also, for example, the expiry of halal certificates. Also important when we talk about delivery requirements to refer to the halal requirements. So, for example, you can refer to the International Halal Supply Chain Management System Standard or the HSC Alliance Halal Supply Chain Protocols. You can also refer to your local halal supply chain standard if there is one. Yeah. So the contracting is extremely important. I see a lot of gaps when we talk about contracts in there. Put attention to that, and it also is worthwhile to get an expert involved in making sure that your contracts are solid. Now we go into the operational purchasing process. The first step in the operational purchasing process is ordering. So when we order a product from a supplier you have a contract with, also good to notify in there that in the freight documents, in also the labels, it clearly identifies the product as halal. So preferably that is put on the actual freight documents as well as on the label of the box or tertiary packaging. Can also be on a pallet and then shrink wrap. Make sure it is easily recognizable. You can only segregate halal from non-halal when you properly identify that. So in the ordering from your supplier, also clearly state for halal critical items to identify the product as halal, to make sure that all the logistics partners and your distributor and the importer can clearly recognize the product as halal and takes proper care of that. Expediting in evaluation is the second step in the operational purchasing process, or the fifth step, the overall purchasing process. When receiving the product, it's important to check. Do we see a proper identification of halal on the freight documents, on the packaging? Does the product have a halal certificate? Is that with the cargo, or was it given to you via email or other means? What is the condition of the product? And in case if there's any doubt, it can be through damages, or if the product might not be halal certified, do a proper inspection and also have a specific area for products that are in inspection before releasing this to the production floor. So there need to be specific protocols for receiving the product in your factory to check if the product is halal, and in case of doubt that it can be further inspected and then determined if it's halal or not. If it's not halal, it to be removed from the premises. The last step in the purchasing process is the follow-up and evaluation. So important to make sure that you have a solid supplier base. So it's important to monitor if there are any halal issues with your deliveries from that supplier. Check and preferably have automated this to check the validity of the halal certificates from your suppliers. Provide an early warning to the suppliers in case they have the halal certificate expiry, for example, in 6 months in time. Monitor the progress of the new halal certificate and make sure that it's part of your dashboard for the procurement department. So try to automate it when possible to simplify it and reduce risk from your supplier. As shared before, there's no quicker way to lose your halal certificate by non-compliance of your supplier, and they can be damaging. We have seen big brand owners getting into trouble because of non-compliance of their suppliers. The final topic to address is collaboration in purchasing. So I've been working with the Halal Supply Chain Alliance on creating that halal supply chain network with brand owners in the food, cosmetics, pharmaceutical space, but also modest fashion. We want to create a synergy within the halal industry. That is what we talk about, horizontal collaboration, including purchase. So we want to collaborate in purchasing of halal critical items, in particular halal ingredients and packaging materials, and maybe also in areas such as water filters. We also want to work together in collaborating in the logistics area, in particular in transportation, sea freight, air freight, domestic transport, and also storage. Then we also help in terms of synergy in Islamic finance and also takaful. So we are currently in discussion with various organizations also to provide, to simplify also Islamic finance and also takaful throughout the supply chain. So if this is of interest, join the movement and also go to our website of hscalliance.org. So a final note on this masterclass on halal purchasing. Purchasing, I think, is the most important function for halal certified companies. It needs to be protected by the organization through halal by design. I shared with you the importance of a solid halal strategy, I shared the importance of contracts. We need to organize the halal risk management properly by the purchase department. We need proper dashboards, KPIs. We need IT also to simplify halal purchasing for the organization. So before we go into the Q&A, I would like to thank you for attending this masterclass on halal purchasing. Our next masterclass will be on Thursday, 18 December, conducted by Mr. Rizky Utomo. So he's the chairman of the Halal Logistics Association Indonesia. He will be covering the topic of halal logistics from an Indonesian perspective. Very important because halal logistics is mandatory in Indonesia. I look forward to seeing you there.